Hi, I'm with MTV Crib.
Awesome. Welcome to my crib. Hi, my name is Jason Aponte. I'm here. I've been at the Bakehouse for I don't know, about 8 years or so, I think. And I'm from Miami, Florida. Born and raised here. And welcome to my studio.
Thank you for having us, Jason. I'm so excited. First, I gotta share a little thing with you. So you may not know this, but you got a fan club.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
You do. You have a fan club.
Okay.
And so a few of us. And the question that we want to know is, which rain are you being reincarnated in? I gotta go back to the girls and
Okay.
tell them that because you got fans.
Wow. Okay. Holy cow. Velasquez. Yeah, definitely.
You know what? I see it.
You see it?
I totally see it.
Okay. Why? Because of the beard? No, it's too gray, and it's not long. And like the mustache is not long enough.
No, I guess. All right. So, how long have you been in the bakehouse?
Well, like I said before, about 8 years or so, and I actually started upstairs, and that was kind of cool because I had a nice crew from upstairs, and we were kind of joke around and we call ourselves the Upsiders, and and we were able to like blast music upstairs and just paint and draw, and everybody was just having a good time and we're downstairs. We have to be a little bit more sensitive to the to the sound and make sure that we're not disturbing too much. But so I do kind of miss being upstairs in some ways. But I love it here. I love it down here, and the Bakehouse is a fantastic place. I mean, it's unique, and I'm really just ecstatic to be a part of it. I've grown up here in Miami. It was hard to find anything like this that really that you can kind of jump into and have the community of artists and see each other every day, have shows together, or those connections lead to other shows, and so it's one in a million.
And it's changed a lot throughout the years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed from the way it looked, the way it's kind of functioned. Yeah, in its earlier days when I was here, it was a little bit more, a lot more casual in terms of how things were run, and so we've benefited from having a little bit more organization and getting more funding, so we can expand and change this place to a high-end facility. And so looking forward to what's going to happen in the future to this place.
That's when we met, is when you had the studio upstairs.
Yeah, that's when we met. Exactly. Yeah.
It's cool. It was seemed like an apartment.
It was like an apartment. Yeah.
All right, you got to show me around.
Okay. Let's see. So
Where should we start?
I think weird stuff. Yeah. I've got paintings from, these are like little landscape paintings. I had a bunch of landscape paintings that I painted over, just doing some weird stuff with them. This is actually from Fairchild Tropical Gardens. I sat there, did a plein air, and then this is the Bakehouse, in the garden of the Bakehouse, just sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
And some paintings of reflection series that I was doing, and then here I have stacks of my sketchbooks.
Okay, so I got to talk about your sketchbooks because you have a giant collection of sketchbooks. How often, is it just part of you at this point that you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a part of me. I go through phases of where I'm carrying it all the time, to the point where it's annoying of the people that I'm around, because they're like hurry up and finish because I want to go home. But yeah, most of the time I'll try to carry something with me. especially when I'm traveling. Forget it. If I don't have my sketchbook when I'm traveling, I feel anxious, and and sometimes I feel like I'm not absorbing the place if I'm not drawing it or painting, and or the people that I'm meeting and interacting with on those trips.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's my way of externalizing my memory.
Your memory from it.
Huh?
Your memory.
Yeah, exactly. My memory. Yeah. And here, I guess I'll open up a couple
brushes.
here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and then the brushes.
Them up.
Here, let's take a look.
You got all this bunch of goodies.
Yeah. So here was a trip to the Czech Republic and Italy and such. Oh yeah, first it was Italy, and then Czech Republic.
Oh, wow. You're so talented, Jason. you got fans.
Thank you. One
How beautiful that is.
That's Prague. And
how was the trip? Like, you've been traveling.
I mean, not a whole lot. I try to do something every year. Just recently, I was in Poland and also the Czech Republic, and those trips are, I mean, they're amazing. Poland, one of the most amazing things was a UNESCO site, a salt mine that's there.
Oh.
And yeah, it's traveling's fun. It gives you a context of where you're from, and maybe some of the things that you would like to change back home, you pick up from when you're traveling. Yeah. So, but then all my brushes.
Do you have a favorite one? I always want to know what's.
Well, my favorite brushes.
Yeah.
I like flats. So here's just a flat that I like, and then I'll go into some that are really torn apart so that I can really scumble. So so I can kind of just
give us a
really sure. So
this is your palette?
Yeah, this is a palette that I work with, and it's just a glass palette, and I painted gray on the back of the glass so that I can see my whites and see my darks.
Right.
So they both pop out, and it's fairly neutral gray. It's a little on the warmer side, but yeah. So now I can just scumble on, and this would be like not when I start to really do details, just kind of laying down the base paint and getting the flow of the painting, because since I don't really paint with a drawing, I do a lot of back and forth, and when I say back and forth, I mean that I put something down, I will sometimes overstep, and then I'll knock it back with another tone, so that I can start to build the form. For instance, let me get some of this in here. And then I will come and knock it out like this. That way I can get, start to really build the edge, and then it becomes my drawing too. I like this process because it helps to sometimes break the edge and create a little bit more movement. So if you have very stiff drawing, then that line is just too linear, and you can't. It doesn't allow it to really move. And I like the lost and found edges.
How do you start? Do you start from photograph?
So depending on what I'm doing. So in this case, yeah, I was starting from photographs. I took some pictures out in the Everglades, and I found a Tesla robot in the design district, and so I took a picture of the Tesla robot because I couldn't believe that I just stepped into the future.
One of my favorite, I think my favorite painting. Well, I love Miami Eden. I love that painting, but I think one of my favorite is your Labyrinth.
Labyrinth, yeah.
I love it so much.
Thank you.
It's just everything that's wonderful about childhood and nostalgia, and you're really good at conveying.
Millie's talking about an older series that I was piecing together, old fantasy films and fantasy and science fiction films, and then overlaying it on top of like common day-to-day scenes. Just I was
Coffee
playing,
shop,
yeah, and I was playing with the idea of bringing those things into my world again, and it was a fun series. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. But yeah, now I'm on to different things. I don't know about it bigger and better, but it's bigger.
It's definitely bigger. Do you like to paint large, or is it just a matter of like how much room you have, or when you conceive a painting, is it large to start or small, or
it's down to the original concept and how I felt about the image that I started to create. Maybe at that point I'm like, okay, yeah, this needs to be a big piece.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy making very small pieces. You know, for a while there, I kind of felt that most of my friends and I was very nomadic, and I like the idea of having, you know, these little pieces that you can just carry with you anywhere you wanted.
Yeah.
You can keep it in your car if you wanted to, you know. But of course, when you start to work really large, it has a presence, and I really haven't done, you know, a lot of really large pieces, and I kind of want to move into that a little bit. So I've got a few.
Pretty large.
Yeah, this is pretty. I have no idea what the size is right now. Yeah, it's a decent sized piece.
And most of your paintings, like I know a lot of them come from your vivid dreams, no?
Well, I did a series that is a mix of my dreams, nightmares. I also suffer from a sleep disorder. Yeah, it's called well, essentially it's a hypnagogic hallucination. And
what?
Yeah, so as I'm falling asleep or waking up for 30 seconds, sometimes a minute or so, I'll actually see something in the room. So this week has been an active week for me when it comes to this. I mean, just the other night I had two massive, what do you call, dragonflies. I mean, they were this big, hovering over the bed, and I could hear the sound. So it's not just visual, the audio is too. So the fluttering from the wings were really intense. But they were kind of actually beautiful, so it was kind of cool too. But I've had some pretty scary ones.
Do you have to wake up and immediately start sketching, or?
Well, that's the thing, is I'm already awake.
You're already awake.
Yeah. So no, I'll process it later. Usually, I'll sit down and I'll draw something, and yeah.
So, what's a typical day in the studio look like for you? Like, do you love listening to music? Is there any groups in particular, or do you need to chill, or do you need?
Yeah, no, I would say most of the time I'd rather have really kind of loud and obnoxious music.
Really?
I would, but because of where I'm at, I have to be a little bit more mellow. But no, I listen to a lot of rock and older country,
yeah.
And alternative music, jazz, some Latin music too as well. So, and I'll listen to audiobooks and podcasts. Not so much podcasts anymore. I used to listen to 99% Invisible, and that was probably it mostly. Yeah, but now, I mean, I've gotten a little bit more into audiobooks just because for a while I stopped reading, and I said I need to figure out a way to keep reading, and so that's been a more recent venture for me to start up in audiobooks. Yeah, but my day coming in, I have a full-time job as well, so a day job. I'm a optometric technician or ophthalmic technician.
Yeah.
So I work with eye doctors. I focus primarily on imaging and testing, and so I'm doing that all day long. And so when I get to the studio, sometimes I just need a moment to literally just sit down and stare at the wall, and I'll do that. So, you know, and I'll slowly start to build out like build up my energy again. I'll come and I'll I'll just like lay down my paints and then I'll sit down again, and then I'll just look at the painting that I am working on.
I gotta tell you, you have such cool furniture. I need to get a glimpse of this.
Well, this was my grandmother's, and it's some piece of crap cheap, cabinet or drawers. But I ended up painting it because I really hated the original color. So I painted it red, and then I added new hardware. Yeah. Oh, and this is a remnant of one of my peers and friends, Andre Martinez. It was one of his sculptures. He's doing amazing. He is a kid and he's doing fantastic. But yeah, so I added that to my drawer.
And I see that you got the provisions.
Well, I have my secret food, and actually, I just emptied out I defrosted my fridge, and I cleaned it out so it's completely empty. There's nothing in it right now, but I have like my
your whole kitchen?
just this kitchen, my mini kitchen, my microwave. So exciting.
Where'd you get this one? This is a cool piece.
So I made this.
You made this?
Yes, and it's been in process forever because I still haven't figured out what the hell I'm doing on the side. But it's my first mosaic, and I love the process. It was so much fun.
Is it hard to do?
It was just a matter of figuring out the beginning of it, really, and how do you keep your design and still follow that design with the tiling without so if you wanted some more exact or precise drawing, figuring out that process, which using this mesh was actually key to that, which was fun.
Are you thinking of doing more?
Yes, I want to do a lot more of these.
You would get into 3D, like in sculpture and pieces.
If I had a lot more room in my studio, I would probably do some more sculpture and mosaics and such. This stuff is bulky. I mean, you ask any of the sculptors here in the Bakehouse, and it's the problem is storage. I mean, where do you put these pieces after you're done? I kind of wish the Bakehouse had a storage place for us.
What about you? Where do you put your paintings?
Oh well, behind here. This is going to be tricky. Take a peek. Yeah, take a sneak peek, and you can see. Oh yeah, so that one I'm kind of I'm not sure if I'm done or if I'm working on it still or not. So that's another one.
Okay, I see. You managed, but in storage.
I created a little storage unit in there.
Very necessity.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I send pieces to family members and say, "You're holding on to this, for a while." My problem is that I lose track of where things are. It's like where the hell did I put that piece? So I'm not organized.
For you? Did you know at a very early age? Were you always into painting, or did you study it?
So I think I was always into painting. My first masterpiece was inside of my dog's doghouse. I went in there with tempera paints, and I don't know, I was like 8 years old or something, and I created like a mural inside the doghouse. It was my first kind of full envisioned scene, a landscape of unicorns and volcanoes and rainbows and clouds, and yeah, I don't think I've changed that much from that scene. So, excuse me. But then I had, of course, working with temperas. I was working with pastels and watercolors, and from very early on. And then my first oil painting set, I think I was 12 or 13, and my parents yelled at me because I painted a bunch of wolves on my door to my bedroom with oil. So they were kind of mad at me.
Oh my gosh.
But then my mom commissioned me to do a mural inside the bathroom with acrylics, and I painted mermaids underwater in a ocean scene.
So you were always into art, like you.
Yeah, I was always into art, and I always, and even then I was keeping sketchbooks. And But then I went to Miami-Dade for a little while, and to just figure things out with art, and so I took a couple years there, and then I went to Ringling School of Art and Design, and that's where at first I was going in thinking I was going to do concept development for film and video games.
Which I think you'd be insane. You'd be amazing at that.
Well, yeah, the thing that I realized about that is, you're working under an art director, and you kind of romanticize the idea of that, and it's a lot of grunt work as well.
Yeah.
So I decided, no, I didn't want to go that route, and kind of work in my own visions, and steer myself. So after school, I moved to Boston. I just kind of picked up and said, I'm going to move to Boston, and I started to. I actually got a studio there in Boston, and then I also started to work as a technician. I kind of went back to school to learn some of the things I needed to become a technician, and I worked 4 days as a tech, and had my studio the rest of the time.
How? I keep looking at this painting.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Yes. So this is part of a series that I was dealing with people that have had to move due to economic or environmental situations, and then this is kind of, again, playing the idea of overlapping sort of common day-to-day scenes, or juxtaposing other images into it to tell a different narrative. And this stems from my own experience of going through Hurricane Andrew, and having to leave my home, and because I was living in Homestead at the time, and of course, as Homestead was destroyed,
Completely.
and
I
so
still remember that.
yeah, oh yeah,
Because you and I are we're the same age.
yeah, about that, yeah. So it was pretty vivid memory in my mind, and so I had to change high schools. Went from Homestead Senior High to Hialeah Miami Lakes.
Yeah.
And then once my high school was restored, we went back, but everything was still gone. So it was a very weird next few years, I would say. Was kind of different. And but the idea of returning home and rebuilding, and everything kind of comes back to the norm. And that's where, like, something like this too, it's similar idea, where it's very bad situation, but then come back to this normalcy. So I see these as all cyclical.
Do you work on one series at a time, or do you find that you kind of have to get one idea
I
out?
go back and forth, I realize, a lot. So
you revisit projects.
I revisit ideas, yeah. So, and I feel that's more natural of a thought process versus just constantly working on this one thing.
Same.
I what am I? It's like, what am I passionate about at the time? And sometimes I kind of want to let go of those passions, and try to absorb what's around me, and just say, okay, this is really interesting, or maybe so actually I did this kind of group of drawings and paintings of, like, I call them like little Rorschach paintings. So
Yeah.
I start making marks, and then I start to try to find imagery within those marks, and some should find some things like that.
I love this.
So I was letting the narrative find me. And there's some weird things that happen, and couldn't tell you what they mean. You can start to dig into my psyche, I
So it
guess, a
almost
little bit.
becomes like a storyboard at first, to some extent, right? Like a
I don't
film.
know. I mean, well,
There's
you know,
very film-like, yeah.
film is a big part of me, and I.
What are some? What's your favorite film? I'm curious.
Oh crap.
All right, top 5 then.
Top top 5. All right, I love sci-fi, so I have to say Aliens or Alien, either one of those really, and then there's like Cinema Paradiso. It's just like that's fantastic film. Man, you putting me on the spot on that one. Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, that's really good.
Interstellar is definitely one of my favorites. These were little paintings I did after a dream I had of it was like a giant hole in the ocean, and I was actually being pulled into it, and it was spinning me around, and it was wild. It was pretty wild. Tornadoes are very.
I love
Wizard
how
of
you
Oz.
paint people because you're so good at capturing expression, like the look on their face sometimes. Like,
this was a weird dream that I don't want to explain right now.
you gotta let us know. Look at that. Oh.
Yeah, so I did. I mean, these are all those sort of lost and found paintings.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of them.
You like everything. You like oil and acrylic. You do watercolor as well.
Watercolors and I use a lot of gouache as well, which is an opaque watercolor. And I use that in my sketchbooks too, the opaque watercolor, because this paper kind of holds it pretty well. It's like a waxier paper, so it can sit on top. Versus watercolor, it needs to kind of bleed into the paper, and these sketchbooks don't really hold regular watercolor very well. But yeah, so I work with pretty much everything. I mean, most of the paintings that I'm working in here are oils, but lately I've been working with water-soluble oils. And
what's the difference?
Well, just in terms of what you're using to thin the paint down, instead of using mineral spirits, which is pretty toxic, I'm using water. So this is water. It's not mineral spirits.
This is what this is.
This is It literally breaks down with just water, which is awesome.
Is it easier for you to use? Or?
Not just easier, but I also don't feel like I'm gonna die so soon.
I mean, I think the ship is sailed for.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure the damage is already it's done, and I'm. but this is water soluble oil. This is water soluble oil. That's regular oil here.
So, but oil, is it just? Why is it so tough? Is it because it just takes forever to dry, or is it less forgiving? Or
I don't actually believe that oil is so tough. I think we've kind of ingrained that idea into our minds that it's so tough. I think it's like any medium. I mean, even just pencil could be tough if you're allowing that medium to control you and not really understanding it. And the only way to understand it is to use it, because then you're building up all those little variables and putting them together, and you just know how it's going to react to whatever surface you're working on. So the same thing with oils, you just got to use it. You have to use it. If you don't use it, you don't know how it's going to react. So a lot of people, especially younger artists, they a lot of them are working on a digital media and digital format. So painting in like Photoshop or Procreate, these painting programs, and when they're great in that, and they can really manipulate those programs, and they can make beautiful work in those programs. But the moment they start to get into this brush and paint, it all falls apart.
What do you
And
think that is? It's just,
because it's like any tool, you're getting familiar with how those tools are going to react on whatever surface. With paint, you're dealing with gravity, you're dealing with whatever you're mixing it with, you're dealing with the canvas or paper or
whatever
whatever it's going to be on. And all those things are all those variables that you have to take into consideration when you're actually working and painting.
Do you find when I always like to ask this of every painter, it's a little cheesy. When do you know it's done? Do you have a hard time? Because I find a lot of the painters that I speak, it's not finished yet.
Yeah.
Like, no, I need to do this yet. Like I need to.
I think.
And you know that I'm really close to painters.
Yeah.
I love painting.
I think everyone, every artist that I know, never feels their work is done.
No.
And I mean, I would say almost everyone. But
how do you know when to stop?
There's a lot of factors when it comes to that. Sometimes it's just you have a deadline. Sometimes it's I'm kind of sick of myself and I need to get away from that. Then there's people yelling at you, stop, and that's so that's when I guess you stop and you say, okay, I get to put this down and move on to something else. Or you have other ideas that you just really want to get to.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot of times for me, I will stop a piece because I get to that point where I'm like, okay, I need to move on. Then I go and I look at the piece and I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe I did stop at the right time, or and in hindsight, it's like, okay, this is okay. I can leave this alone now.
Leave it alone now.
Yeah, but like Bernard, he would, finish a painting, but then the moment it was hung in a gallery, he would actually start to work on it in the gallery.
In the gallery.
Yeah.
Actually, I know a lot of painters who do that.
And I think it's a great idea. I don't see why not.
No, I'm cool with it. Keep going.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're cool with it.
I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. I understand. I get it. Like
it's tough.
Art is hard, and creating art is so hard.
Right.
Yeah, it's not for.
I'm trying to get myself into the mode of how I felt when I was a kid in terms of making art. And that mode is I just really enjoyed doing it, and it was like magic, it felt like magic, or it felt like I was capturing magic. And I kind of missed a little element of that. And so I'm trying to find a way back to that idea. Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite painters? I'm curious. Who are the ones that truly have inspired your work and you love?
Yeah, was it Edward Hopper, Vermeer, definitely like Franz Hals, Velasquez. We mentioned Velasquez. Someone I was more recent, Antonio Lopez Garcia. He's a Spanish painter, and Cecily Brown, Lucian Freud, Francis Bacon. A lot of painters.
He's
but
intense.
Bacon's intense. Bacon's a weird has a kind of a weird place for me in the sense that sometimes I really don't like the paintings, but I feel the paintings.
Yeah.
So I like that about Francis Bacon. It kind of attacks my psyche. It attacks my subconscious. And I was actually went to Sorrento for a little while, and I found a museum there. It was a very small museum, and they ended up having a bacon show there, and not edible bacon, but then and so going through there, they had a lot of these Time magazine covers that he was manipulating. So he was drawing right on top of them, and you would see things like John F. Kennedy, and he's doing some drawings right over on top of that, and I found that he just allowed himself to just think and just see the world differently, and he didn't care what he was using You know, if I were to use like a Time magazine, I would be afraid of like, you know, just kind of using pop culture too much, or you know, and I felt that way when I was doing some of the fantasy sci-fi series, and and I liked his freedom, and he allowed that space in his mind. It was wild because inside that museum, by the way, was a death mask of Francis Bacon.
What?
Yeah, it was insane. It was that actually threw me back a little bit. I was like, whoa, holy crap. Yeah.
Is there a particular painting that has left a mark on you?
Yeah, I would let's say maybe there was a series, of course, from Andrew Wyeth, the Helga series.
Yeah.
That body of work is, I find, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it reproduces pretty well in books, but I did get a chance to see a lot of them because I went to his house and museum in Maine.
You did?
I did. And
how was that experience?
Oh, it was wild because you really understood the mood and the sense of the people there, and why he was painting the way he was painting. And I find like his connection to those people really weird and interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes abusive, I think, but it was, you know, I've heard stories of him like going into there's, you know, the couple that lived there, and he would go there and just like go into their house and just start painting them, and they might be sleeping or something, and then you walk out.
And you see it,
like that's, you know, it's kind of, that's weird shit, but and then, you know, his family story I find really fascinating. His father, N.C. Wyeth, was a famous illustrator for books, um, and he had a very particular sense of values that he kept for his family. He didn't want them to see any films or go to the theater. He wanted them to read books. He wanted them to, if they wanted to see a play, they would have to make a play and reenact it. And he had all the props and things because he kept a lot of props for his for the illustrations, and so he would have his family.
That is wild.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Gosh.
But in terms of singular painting, Ophelia from Malay is really, really, really gorgeous. And let me see. Now I'm stumped. Hold on, because I've done like a billion of them, but yeah, they will pop up later. Yeah.
I have to ask you, what's your advice to younger artists if they wanna do this? And is there anything you wish you were told?
Yeah. Write more about your own work and kind of try to externalize your thoughts in that way, so that
that's great. I haven't heard that advice. I'm collecting advice here.
Yeah, well, you know, I think this day and age we are, you know, sadly, I think a lot of the public is more interested in the artist statement than the art.
Yes.
And
I agree.
And so I would love to reverse a gallery and say like, okay, you walk in, you see the work, and then you see the artist statement.
Yes.
I kind of would prefer that, but maybe that's my bitterness. But in terms, you know, I need to do more of that myself, and write more about what I'm doing and my thoughts, and put it down so that I can dissect it, have other people really look at it, expose yourself to trust someone else to really look at the writing, and see if you're making any sense about which direction you're going. So that, I would say, that's my number one advice. Secondly, I would say that nothing is precious. When you think is precious, try to maybe break it down. One of my painting instructors, he would tell me, so he would show me a painting that I thought was beautiful that he did, and he's doing it right in front of me, and then he would take a palette knife and just scrape the whole thing, right? But
Gosh.
now you're left with sort of this ghost of what was there before, and then he would paint on top of that, and he would make it even more beautiful. It was
Really?
insane. That was magic to me to see that, to see him literally just scrape away the paint, and I realize what it's doing. I mean, it's creating another layer. It's creating um, sort of this base that acts as a drawing, so that you can work on top of, and then push those edges, that lost and found edge that I was talking about here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What's next for you? Like, do you have any plans in terms of what you want to do or travel? Or
I would like to tap into some more some residencies, short-term residencies. I would like to um, try to get into doing more public works, and um, yeah, I think that those are important steps for me, just so I can get out of my head and out of my little bubble here in the big house, um, and allow more experiences to happen. With my day job, I have a very fixed amount of time to really do that, and then come and work, and so it hasn't allowed me to.
Something is, you've remained active, because a lot of artists actually don't have a day job and don't know what that's like. Some do, many of them do, of course, but how do you manage to balance both?
Well, full disclosure, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get in a rut, and I'm like, I need to figure something out, and I have moments where it takes a long time to really, get out of that, and I force myself to maybe just to do smaller pieces,
Right.
and doing the smaller pieces keeps me flowing a little bit, because then these can become overwhelming, in the sense that it's like, okay, I have a lot to do on that piece, so I need to commit a lot of time to it, and and for me, it's a lot about energy, keeping that energy up, and I fail sometimes when it comes to that. A lot. I do. Yeah, but in also in terms of I'm like, this piece here is a start of something that I'm looking to do, which is move away from doing things that are just about my past, and getting locked into my past, and my past, or in my internal dreams, and such. So here it's more about talking about the future, and finding ways of thinking about the future without it being so pessimistic and frightening. We can get into, oh, the world is going to end soon, and I hate that. I really do, because I think every generation has that sort of thought and that fear,
right?
And I just don't want to sit in that fear. So
and it could be self-fulfilling prophecy.
that too. Maybe you're creating what you are fearing. So, so with this, I want to create a positive future, or spin it in a way that feels positive. And so, like, for this piece, I think of the Tesla robot as, maybe it could be a guardian to the Everglades, so it's taking away the invasive species, removing them, keeping tabs on trash, and I know people should go out into these places just to see how beautiful they are, but I mean, in all honesty, do we really want all of us to go to the Everglades? No, because we'll tear it apart. And so I see this as a way of removing ourselves from it and preserving it, using technology. I've been imagining, like, drones replanting mangroves, even, things like that. So I've kind of planned out a bunch of images for that series, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, that's where I'm at today.
Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you,
for giving me
Millie.
your time this morning. I'm really excited because I've known you for a while, and having this time with you has been really, really cool.
Awesome.
So I'm going to report back to the fan club.
Okay, thank you, Millie.
I'm going to have Jason's info in the description. Contact him if you're interested.
Or if you like something, buy that.
Buy that, exactly. We gotta buy art. We have to buy art. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Millie. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.